Sukihontu and good evening to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Dhammadana series brought to you by Buddhist Magghavihari Malaysia. Today's session is also live on TBCN Facebook. Do subscribe our Facebook for more information. The topic for tonight is Self-Compassion by Bhante Watagoda, Magghavihari Thero. Tonight, we're going to have two hosts serving Bhante today, myself, Sister Gayi, and Brother Osman. So, Brother Osman is going to walk through with you on Bhante's background. Over to you, Brother Osman.
Thank you, Sis Kai. So, Bhante Magghavihari is one of the prominent disciples of the late Na Uyane Aryadhamma Mahathera, from whom he took his ordination in 2006. Having lived and learned under the supervision of Aryadhamma Mahathera for 6 years, Bhante Magghavihari went to Myanmar in 2012 to further his studies on Theravada Buddhism at the International Theravada Buddhist Missionary University. There, he earned both BA and MA while extensively studying Theravada Buddhism as preserved by the Burmese tradition. He started his teaching career as an Abhidhamma teacher in Nauyana Forest Monastery and continued to do so at ITBMU, helping his fellow colleagues. As a senior student, he taught Abhidhamma, Vipassana, Pali, and Vinaya to a number of junior students at ITBMU. In addition, he has enormous experience with monastic life, both in Thai and Burmese traditions. As a practitioner, he spent some of his time at Wat Pah, Nanachat, practicing and learning Thai forest tradition, and he practiced a few other meditation techniques such as Mahasi and Mogok during his stay in Myanmar. Currently, Bhante Magghavihari serves as the Vice President of the International Institute of Theravada, conducting online courses for both laity and monastics all around the world. His English medium course on fundamentals of Theravada Buddhism is highly praised by many who are interested in this subject. So now, without further ado, let us put our palms together and welcome Bhante Magghavihari. Over to you, Bhante.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone who have joined this online program conducted by the Buddhist Mahavihara. I was invited by Mr. Suminda on behalf of this association to conduct a Dhamma talk or a teaching. And the topic I chose was about self-compassion. It is a topic that is highly discussed in the Buddhist doctrine, but seldom talked among the Buddhists, because the word compassion indicates of being compassionate towards someone, the feeling of not liking others' suffering and the desire to alleviate their suffering and to take them out of the state of suffering and to bring them into a pleasurable, good, better state. So normally compassion, the word for compassion in Pali is karuna. It is normally discussed, we normally discuss it about the compassion towards other beings. So the Buddha was the prominent in this regard. He had the Maha Karuna, the great compassion. So he served the entire world with the understanding he gained under the Bodhi tree. And he sacrificed lots of his comforts, time, to enlighten others. At the same time, and also before his enlightenment, for eons, for a number of eons, for a very, very long period, he sacrificed lots of his pleasures to be a Buddha one day in order to liberate the beings from the round of rebirths. So Buddha, so in Buddhism, when we talk about compassion, we mostly focus on being compassionate towards other beings, and try our best to alleviate their suffering and to bring them into a happier, better state, to make their lives better. At the same time, before we yield our compassion or give our support to others, it is utterly necessary that we love ourselves, that we have compassion towards ourselves and alleviate our own suffering. So in that regard, if you think about what the Buddha did to the entire world, he first liberated himself from the round of rebirth, from the burning of the defilements, and then he showed the path for the other beings, to the other beings, which leads to the destruction of all the suffering and also the liberation from samsara. So therefore, in this regard, being compassionate towards our own selves is also a vital factor in Buddhism. Buddha has given some instructions, especially in Dhammapada, that if someone feels that while engaging in supporting others, if someone feels that he himself would decline in terms of spirituality due to getting involved in the work of supporting others, it's better for him to stop, because first we have to establish ourselves in a platform, in a place where that we ourselves would be would not get affected by any means, or that we ourselves in a very stable position before we support the others. So that is very vital. And also Buddha has mentioned, if someone truly loves himself, that he would put himself in a better practice, so he could be much happier. So as Buddhists, we do talk about charity, we do talk about supporting others, observing silas and not harming others. That is obviously important, that's vitally important, there's no doubt about that, no argument about it. But also we should have a great compassion towards ourselves, because in the end, what matters is we as Buddhists getting rid of the samsara, as sentient beings who are suffering in this samsara. That's why that even in the Buddha's character, Buddha's life, we also can see this, because he liberated himself in the first place and then moved on to support the others, or help the others to get liberated. In this regard, I would like to take our attention towards some aspects of self-compassion. So when I say self-compassion, is being compassionate towards ourselves. The number one of this aspect, this quality, is restraining ourselves from evil deeds and abiding in doing good deeds. Why is that? I will explain it later. So the first aspect of self-compassion is being good, a good person, reducing the bad that we have and trying to be a better person. That is the number one aspect of self-compassion. Then another aspect is, another facet of this particular quality is forgiving our own selves, because we as human beings tend to magnify and see our own faults and start to regret upon them. We start to keep on worrying about our own faults or own mistakes that we have done, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, in whatever aspect in our lives. So forgiving ourselves is another very important aspect in self-compassion, and also living a good life, better life, abstaining from evil deeds. Once the King Kosala, the famous king in the Buddha's life story, I think most of you have heard about him, King Kosala, who ruled the kingdom of Kosala. He was called Pase Nadi Kosala. In Sanskrit, we call him Parasena Jit, one who conquered the enemies and won the enemies. Once he approached the Buddha and said, Bhante, according to my understanding, the ones who truly love themselves abstain from evil deeds and abide doing wholesome deeds, abide in virtue and doing all these good deeds. And the Buddha said, yes, that's true. The reason is when we keep on doing bad deeds, it's harmful to the other. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, we are harming our own selves, because we are in the first place, while we do something bad, we are the ones who are losing our own peace, because bad deeds means things that we do with hatred, anger, or strong lust or greed, and also due to delusion, ignorance. So once we involve in doing bad deeds, it our mind starts to inside mind would say, yes, something that's not something that is which is appropriate that I have done. At the same time, we will not be praised by the wise people in the society. It's another point. And also, if we, for example, for an instant, if we keep on lying, if we have the habit of lying, we are not going to get good remarks from our friends or colleagues or someone whom we work with. And if someone is a businessman and is not keeping his words, that's also detrimental for his business, and the customers would not start to trust him. So likewise, when we keep on doing bad deeds, there are lots of bad effects to ourselves. The social effects, at the same time, our own mind, the inside talk would always remind us that you have earned this, you have come into this position not by proper means. We have cheated, we have lied. So it's not something that we can be proud of. Sometimes in certain societies, certain groups, people may be proud about their own evil deeds, but inside the mind we know that, because the thing is, even if we earn something by stealing or cheating someone, or a certain pleasure by cheating our partner or something, it's obviously we would not appreciate if we were treated in the same way. So for example, a person who earns something by doing some fault or harming someone else would always keep an eye, always remind himself that he will always be alert that would someone else would do the same thing to himself or herself. So what does it mean? Inside our heart, we know that what we have done was not proper. Someone has killed someone, deprived a being of his life. We know that the being doesn't appreciate that. No one would appreciate to be killed, and we ourselves would also avoid such a circumstance, death at any cost. Therefore, ourselves would not be at peace, and we cannot be proud of ourselves if we are following some bad conduct. And socially, even though there can be some very quick gains by wrong means, in the long term, people would lose the trust in us, and in the long term, we are losing many things by following improper conducts. So that's these. So therefore, if someone really loves himself, you try to abstain from evil deeds as much as possible, and try to follow the good deeds. Try to be a good person. Then, in terms of karma, as Buddhist, we believe in karma. We trust in karma, that whatever we do, good or bad, would have a similar effect in future. So if someone is doing bad deeds, it's a guarantee that we are giving to ourselves, that it's a door opening for us to suffer in future. Maybe in a woeful realm, or even being humans, we would have lots of various types of. We would have to face various types of hardships in samsara. Therefore, in terms of karma, if you do bad things, wrong deeds, that's also harming our own selves. Because we know that there are lots of stories about how beings have suffered in samsara, even due to some small deeds that they have done, like out of anger, hatred, and delusion or ignorance. So therefore, as Buddhists, we have to be careful that always you have to think that this life is not, this samsara is not going to end at the end of this life. It's going to continue. The rebirth is going to happen as long as we die with the desire to live, is as long as we have not eradicated the defilements. We are supposed to be born. So the samsara would not be a pleasant place if we keep on doing evil deeds. So therefore, if we truly love ourselves, if we truly have compassion towards ourselves, we would always try to abstain from evil deeds. So, for example, if as a Buddhist, if someone has the opportunity to earn something by a improper means, by stealing or cheating or lying, if someone loves himself, we have to recall him. We have to always think about ourselves. I'm harming my own self, because either in terms of karma, or either I'm losing my own peace. So if someone has compassion towards him or herself, the first thing that he or she would do is to abstain from evil deeds and to do good deeds. So that's the first aspect of this self-compassion. Then it's also loving ourselves. So Buddha said, "Attananche piyanjanya rakkeyanan surakkitan." If someone feels dear to himself or herself, one should always try to abstain from evil deeds and do the good deeds. And then there can be a counter question regarding this aspect, because Buddha has said us, also instructed to get rid of this love towards our own selves. If you look into the Dhammapada, he says, "Uchinda sineha mattano." You just cut off the love towards your own self. You have to get rid of all the passions. If you have to get rid of all the desires, even the desire to live, even the desire to gain happiness. So that has to be removed. At the same time, we are telling, love your own self, so you will not and try to be a good person. So these things, these are two different aspects. Loving, but what the Buddha has mentioned is loving ourselves with craving, like we want to be a better person, like a star in the society, or to be proud of our own selves with conceit, to admire our own personality, and to see ourselves as an attractive person, and to get conceited. So these are the desires that one has to remove. What one should have is the compassion towards ourselves, the desire that, like a desire to be a better person, to have a better life, not to fall into a state of suffering. So these are two different types of desires. The desire that should be developed is called kusala chanda, which is a wholesome desire. There can be some sort of unwholesomeness in that desire sometimes, that is obvious, but still our desire is to be a better person, to get rid of the suffering of samsara, or to avoid the hardships of the outcomes of evil deeds. So this desire comes with some sort of understanding. That is a desire, that desire is very vital in our spiritual progress, and also to be a successful person. At the same time, when you look into the vipassana aspect, we find that as long as we have a desire to live, desire to our own selves, it is an obstacle in order to attain the nirvana. So in our path to liberation, we have to get rid of this desire to the life. Then one can ask a question, what is the desire to attain? What is the desire that we have to attain, that we wish for nirvana, or the desire to get out of the samsara, which is called munchitu kamyata, the desire to get rid of samsara? That desire falls into the first category. The first category says the desire to be a good person, the desire to avoid, to do good deeds, to avoid evil deeds, and also as a Buddhist, the desire to get liberated, to attain nirvana, or to be an arahant. So these are all desires in the better desires, we can call it better desires. In one of the books called Netti Pakarana, it's also mentioned as kusala tanha, a desire that is beneficial. And also we call it kusala chanda, a desire, it's a desire to do good things. So that desire, we have to develop, we have to cultivate that desire. It is very important in our progress. The desire that one has to remove is, which is an obstacle in Vipassana meditation, especially together with the conceit, pride, and so forth. Right? So that's another thing that we have to be aware of. Otherwise, just mentioning about self-compassion may seems like contradicting to the essence of the Buddha's teachings. So now I'll move into the second aspect of self-compassion. Another thing is that we do harm ourselves. Harm means complain ourselves more than anyone else. That's another point. Most of the people have this problem. Like, for instance, if you have made a blunder in a meeting or in front of many people, we keep on remembering or worrying about what we have done. And if something has happened, for example, if one of our friends made the same mistake and he or she would come and tell that I was embarrassed by this and this, we would say, yeah, it's not something pleasant to happen, but just forget it, just leave it and just move on. You don't need to worry about this for a longer period and waste your time. We would say that. The thing is, like, when we are facing our own faults, the wrongdoings that we have done, and when we know that it's something wrong that we have done, we have that, when we have the understanding that it was not something that should have been done, the subjective and objective perspectives play a huge role. So when we are looking into a fault through a subjective angle, we tend to hold into it and we tend to worry about it, and we tend to complain to ourselves that why did you do it? You shouldn't have done it. And we would keep on worrying about it. And if the same thing has happened to someone else, and when we look into it with an objective perspective, we easily tend to forgive or to advise them not to worry about that. So the thing is, the faults, when it comes, I'm talking about the aspect of regret. Now, if someone has done some harm to us, then the anger arises, which is very difficult to get rid of, but it's not much related to self-compassion in this in the topic that I'm discussing. So in that regard, we tend to keep a resentment towards the person who has harmed us. There is also, because there's subjectivity is involved, because he has harmed me or harmed myself or someone whom I love. So therefore, we keep a grudge on that person. So still the subjective approach, subjective aspect is involved there. So I'm not talking about the anger. I'm talking about regret, the worrying, the feeling that torments us, thinking that I should not have done that. If I had an opportunity, I would correct it. So these kind of feelings. And sometimes we do possess certain defects in ourselves. Like sometimes people are naturally shy to talk. They cannot go into an audience and give a speech, or sometimes they don't have certain abilities like others do. So we tend to blame ourselves. We tend to blame our birth sometimes. We tend to blame our parents, or sometimes we do blame our own conduct. So this is another aspect that the point I want to emphasize is the same attributes. Like if someone possesses a certain defect in someone, for example, one of our friends, if he is a true friend, and if we truly love him or her, we would not keep on poking her, or insulting, or punching her on him or her on the defect that she or he possesses. We would always try to look into that with a compassionate approach. If someone comes to us and say, "No, I have made this mistake, I just want to correct it, I'm just worrying," then we would have a great compassion toward that person and we would try to console him or herself. But when it comes to ourselves, it's very difficult for us to forgive ourselves. It's very difficult for us to forgive ourselves as we do to another good friend, a friend whom we truly love. So therefore, it's very important, it's very vital that we forgive ourselves of our faults. But in order to forgive ourselves, we have to, one thing is very, very clear, that We cannot keep on doing the same fault and keep on forgiving ourselves. We should have a strong desire or a intention to stop our faults, to get rid of the mistakes. It doesn't mean that someone would be able to prevent himself from doing from a wrong habit, that like out of overnight. He'd not be able to, if some habits we have developed, some certain unhealthy habits, we'd not be able to get rid of them overnight. It takes a long process, but still during the process we should have a compassionate approach toward ourselves. So mostly people do remember their faults than the good they have done in their own in their own life. Most of the majority of the people, that is the nature. Even in brain science, that's how we are hardwired. We tend to remember the faults in ourselves rather than the good things that we have done. So therefore we tend to hit ourselves mentally, and we tend not to forgive. We do not forgive ourselves very easily. Self-compassion means we should be able to forgive ourselves as we do to our good friends or best friends. How do we approach this? Because we know it's very difficult. First, we have to think that I'm also a human being. I also have defects. I'm also not a perfect person. So it's obvious that we make mistakes. So we have to have we should look into ourselves through a lens of compassion as we look into our children, or we look at our other good friends. That's very vital. And the next thing is, we do make mistakes, and we have to understand, and we do possess defects. Sometimes it's difficult for us to control our temper. Sometimes we do have we obsessively we obsess in doubt. It's very difficult for us to trust someone else. So every people have various defects. So for that, we should know that this defect, this fault is not unique to me. I'm not the first person who has done such a thing. I'm not the first person who possesses such defect. These are shared characteristics. Shared characteristics. So we have to keep on understanding this. Now, for example, if we get to know that I have made such a mistake, we feel like very shameful and we regret about it. Then when we understand that, oh, it's not only me, many people have the same problems. If you go to the internet, you will find that people have similar problems. So when you know that experience, there's a shared experience, our hard stance towards ourselves starts to reduce. So the same approach was taken, same psychology was taken, approach was taken by Buddha in order to tame or alleviate the suffering of Kisa Gotami, the beautiful woman who had a very cute child, and the child died at the very young age, and she couldn't accept the fact that her child was dead. So she took the dead body of the child and was wandering in the city here and there and asking a doctor who could cure this child. And one of the wise persons said, there is a person called Buddha in Jetavana. So if you go to him, maybe he would know a certain remedy for your child. So she took the child to him, the Buddha. The Buddha said, yes, I'm capable, I'm a good physician. I can help you if you bring some mustard seeds from a family in which, in the entire lineage, no one has died. So if you can bring me some mustard seeds from a family of whose lineage, in whose lineage no one has died. Then she went, she had some hope, and she went into houses and asked for mustard seeds to cure her child. Everyone was willing to give mustard seeds. It's nothing for me. If the child could be saved, anyone would give such a thing. But when she asked the second question, has anyone died in your family, in your generation of lineage of the family? They said, no, the people who have died are much larger. Number is much larger than the ones who are living, obviously, because our fathers, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, they all have died by then. Then she went to another house, all the houses. The reply was same. Everyone has died. In every family, people have died. Then she got the understanding by the evening when it was getting darker. She understood, oh, this is not a character. This is not a phenomenon that was only befell on me. It's a phenomenon experienced by all the people. Everyone has, everyone's loved people have died. The people in their lineage have died. So death is a shared characteristic. It's a shared phenomenon. It's not only unique to myself or to my child. Then she just accepted that reality, and she threw the child into a cemetery, and again came to the Buddha and asked for the ordination. So same thing it's very vital when we are thinking about our own faults or defects. We have to always understand, am I the only person who is facing this problem? No, there are a lot. For example, there are many beings who are greatly suffering than we do. It's not only ourselves. So we do blame ourselves. We do blame our past karma sometimes. I'm experiencing this because of this and this. So in the end, we are not that much compassion towards ourselves. For example, if now I normally say this, like if we are to list down all the faults that we have done, the suffering that we encounter in our lives, the problems that we have in the family problems with the partners, or the economic issues in the job, or whatever it is with the children. If you list them and then go to a PETA, hungry ghost, for example, because in Buddhism we know there are hungry ghosts, and if you try to read them, these are my problems, then the hungry ghost will say, what are you talking about? I haven't had a meal for thousands of years. I cannot show myself. I'm like a skeleton. I don't have any intellect. I'm just suffering from inside out. I'm burning with the karmic fire. So he would say, you are just complaining me that your life is miserable. Now think about my life. I'm in a greater miserable state than you are, and you are just complaining. I'm just wishing when I would be a human being, and you are coming and complaining about the human life. Obviously, when we think about think in such way, we would understand that these are not things that we have to worry too much. Yeah, we may have done faults in our lives, but Buddha, as a teacher, in one sutra, he clearly mentions, most of my disciples have done faults before they encounter this teaching. Even after they have encountered the teaching, till they truly observe this, truly fall in, like seriously follow this, it's obvious that we make mistakes. Even King Asoka, the empire who propagated Buddhism in the entire Asia, like Constantine who propagated Christianity, the Roman Catholicism. Ashoka was for Buddhism. He also mentioned in his scribes that though he was a Buddhist for a few years, like he was not a serious practitioner. So it can happen to anyone. Like even before becoming a Buddhist, people normally tend to do faults. Like, I'm not talking about crimes like maybe killing small insects, which is also prohibited in our precepts. Maybe lying, so harming, just enjoying harming others. So like bullying and all this, these are not appreciated by the Buddha as a spiritual teacher. So it's natural that we do such wrong deeds before we become Buddhist. And it doesn't mean that non-Buddhists do that we tend to do that. Before seriously following Buddhism, people mostly tend to do such things. And whenever they understand that what is correct and wrong, they would abstain from that. Even after becoming a good follower, still faults can happen till we come into a higher stage in our practice. So this is not to reduce the weight of faults, but if faults have happened, there's no use of worrying it and just wandering in the past, thinking that I would have done this and that, because its past is never going to happen again, and we are just wasting our time. So what we have to think is, as a human being, I myself also have limitations, that we do some faults, we make some faults, and it's very important that we love ourselves. Like, we now think about a scenario where one of your best friends come and tell about some faults or defects, then we give great amount of love to that person, and would say, please don't worry, think in this way, we are always with you. So that love that we yield to others should in the first place, we should have to ourselves. We should love ourselves and forgive ourselves. Is a very important aspect in self-compassion, and that is a very important aspect in Buddhism. So Buddhism has not discussed about this in this manner, but Buddha has said, do not worry about your deeds, do not regret about your deeds. What does it mean? Implicitly it says, forgive yourself, embrace yourself, and love yourself, and try not to do the same mistake again, and try your best to abide with the good deeds, and try to go forward, try to put your efforts to be a better person. So that when we don't have self-compassion, we have resentment toward ourselves. We may start to hate ourselves, we don't dislike ourselves, we may start to complain ourselves, such as you fool and all these. These are not very healthy as approaches in our practice. So therefore, it's something very vital. So when we have the self-compassion, we love ourselves, we want a better life, we want to be better people, and we want to forget about life, not to worry about the deeds that we have done, but to think about the good things that we have done. So what happens is we come into a positive aspect of mind, which is very vital, in terms of progressing in spirituality. I'll conclude my talk. The fourth hindrance in the Buddhist teachings is called Uddhacca Kukkucca. Uddhacca is restlessness, Kukkucca is worry. This worry is a great hindrance for the great hindrance to the spiritual progress, in the path towards spiritual progress. So therefore, in order to get rid of regret, we have to forgive ourselves. For that, we have to love ourselves. And also, we have to allow ourselves not to to get rid of the bad deeds, but to abide with the good deeds. So I wish you all the best, that may you be able to have more love, compassion towards yourselves, which is very vital, and forgive ourselves and embrace ourselves like a very nice friend, and live a happier life, so that you'll be able to progress further in the spiritual practice. So I wish you all the best, and it's up to the moderators to, if there's any questions, we can have a discussion.
Thank you so much, Bhante, for sharing us the Dharma session tonight. We shall continue with our Q&A sessions. I'll pick up some questions for Bhante to answer. So the question is, how to cultivate self-compassion whilst not to raise a feeling of proud?
It's a tough question. It's a very good question, and the line is very thin. The self-pride and self-compassion, and I have to say, they are like it's not a black and white cut between these two aspects. It's a very good question. Thank you for your question, actually. So now I have to go much deeper in order to answer this question. So the self-pride is mainly like appreciating our own selves, considering ourselves higher than others, and being proud of ourselves, and thinking that I have no match in my beauty, in my skills, all these. These are called self-pride that we have. That is also good in one aspect, so you get the confidence. At the same time, it's not very pleasant to others, because we would not like to associate someone who is very proud, right? So in the same way, if we are not accepting our own faults, if we are not giving ear to others and if we are not ready to listen what others say, if we are just holding to our own view, own ideologies, so this is not very pleasant for the others. So it's not something that is appreciated if we have it to an excessive level. If we have it to some excessive level, then what happens? Then I also would like to say that sort of pride, that sort of conceit is sometimes helpful for us to progress, have success in life. For example, if someone is very cautious about his status about the life, that can be a reason. The pride for the status can be a reason for him to abstain from certain evil deeds, because she may think like it's not suitable for a person like me to do such things and such things. The main root can be pride, but it can have a better outcome. So therefore, this self-pride is not something completely, it's not something that should be abandoned fully. It's not very easy to abandon it completely, but having it to an excessive level, it's not very pleasant to others. And also, you are the person who has who is proud about himself or has the conceit is in a very it's a very huge pressure to him or her, because the person with high self-esteem is always afraid of failures. That can also lead to some sort of depression in the long run. So excessive pride is not very useful. Then comes to the self-compassion. Self-compassion always comes with understanding. It's understanding what is good and bad to our lives. What would happen if I do this and this? What would happen if I follow this course of conduct? So having this understanding, we know what is better for ourselves. So then, knowing what is better, we want to embrace that. We want to follow that. Why is that? Because we don't want to suffer. So that is a feeling of self-compassion. We don't want to get into unnecessary problems. So because we are not going to, for example, while we are crossing the road, we are not going to purposefully crash into a vehicle, right? Because it can cause lots of unnecessary problems. At the same thing, if we have a broader understanding about the life and the samsara and the karma, we would not be involved in evil deeds, because we don't want to get ourselves into unnecessary problem. Because for example, some insects are disturbing us. Okay, that's something not very pleasant. But instead of trying some way to get rid of that or to chase them away, if we start to kill them, we are bringing an unnecessary. We are creating a karma that would bring an unnecessary suffering to us in samsara. It's not the suffering. The effects would not be seen on that spot, and we are planting a seed that would bring up some unnecessary troubles. So likewise, self-compassion comes with an understanding what is good and bad to ourselves. So when we know what is good, the desire to obtain that good. Now we know if we do this, it's a bad outcome. If we do this, it's a good outcome. So knowing what would give the good outcomes, we try to abide with that. Why is that? We have a desire to get the good result. So this is not something like pride. It's not something sort of self-esteem or looking down on others or keeping ourselves in a higher position. So this desire is quite different. This desire is the desire to get a better outcome. So why do we have that desire? Because we allow ourselves. We don't want to get into trouble. So that is self-compassion. And also I would like to say, the pride, the aspect of pride that which I did not praise, or which I talked in a like something not good. To some level, that is very useful. The Buddha has mentioned manang nisaya manang pajahati. Depending on conceit, one would eradicate conceit one day. That is tanhan nisaya tanham pajahati. Depending on craving, one would eradicate craving. That what does it mean? We do have a desire to be some people who have a desire to be a Buddha, to be a Pacceka Buddha, to an Arahant. That is a desire. In some places, it can be a wholesome desire, like the self-compassion, that with understanding, the desire based on self-compassion. Sometimes people may have that the drive, the true craving can happen to go into such states. Now think about, for example, Yasodhara's case, the wife of the Buddha. Yes, it's a very high state to be a wife of a bodhisattva in his final life, and surely she would also get liberated one day. But now think, this desire is mainly there is a lots of component in it with love towards the bodhisattva. Love means lust, the attachment, craving was there. So in that regard, but that craving helped her to become one of the greatest ladies in the world and to get liberated. So therefore, in some aspects, I just brought one example. In some places, this craving can be helpful for the further progress. But Buddha has mentioned, even though it's helpful in the beginning, you have to get rid of that craving or conceit at the end in order to get liberated. We cannot have that craving and get liberated. Yasodhara could not have the craving towards bodhisattva and become an arahant. No, she has to abandon it one day. It has to happen. So in the beginning, these cravings, the desires that with lust and with all these desires are sometimes helpful for people to progress further. I hope I answered it to a satisfactory level. So I focused on the pride and sort of desire, which is talked as negative aspect in the desire, and the self-compassion, the desire to be a good or get a better result, and also how some sort of craving is helpful for someone to progress.
There's another question. How do we do self-forgiveness with own self while knowing that we cannot unwind the past and sometimes carry regret?
So that's we have answered your question, 50% of the question, because if we know that we cannot go back and correct the fault that we have done, now I think you got the answer. So if you cannot correct it, why to worry about it? What's the use of worrying about it? Because you know that it cannot be corrected. So give much weight to this understanding. It's sort of an understanding that we have. No, we have done a fault and we worry about it. We would think it would be better that we have not done that, we have done it otherwise. And why do we worry? We worry because we know that it cannot be corrected. So this understanding is there. Instead of bringing the worrying aspect, bring this understanding into your surface and understand, oh, it cannot be corrected. We have to accept the reality. So if we cannot correct it, why to waste time on something that cannot be corrected? For example, now, if a child has a desire, for example, if someone has a desire to own the moon, for example, it's a bizarre desire to own the moon, because it's very difficult to get into the moon. I think only few people in the entire world has landed there. So if someone has a desire to obtain the moon, and we would say, don't have that desire, because you are not going to reach that desire in this very life. That's for sure, right? So we would not, then we will say, okay, we'll just give up that desire. So in the same way, worrying also has a sort of a desire that we would wish that we wish that we would have not done that. We would have done otherwise. That's a desire that cannot be fulfilled, like owing the moon. So we have to accept the reality. If we can accept the reality, half of the battle is won. More than the half, right? 60-70% of the battle is won. Then comes the fear of facing the consequences. Fear of facing the consequences. That is another thing that we have to tackle with. If it is related to akusala, what we have to do is do kusalas, opposite kusalas to what we have done, as much as possible. That's the only thing. Now think, if we have lost some money and that money is gone, you cannot bring that money back, you cannot find it again. What we do is we invest again and try to earn that same money, similar amount of money, or a bigger amount of money. So likewise, if you have done faults in our lives, do good deeds as much as possible. Do good deeds as much as possible. For example, sometimes we do regret of losing someone because of our own behavior, right? If you know that it cannot be, that person cannot be taken back, or if you know that it cannot be corrected, what we're supposed to do is not to worry about how we acted on that moment, just to correct ourselves and be a better person. That would also can have a possibility of attracting the same person back into your life, or to attract a much better person in your life, right? So likewise, what we are supposed to do is forget about the past. Don't worry about the past. Accept the fact. That's very difficult. Accepting the fact that it cannot be corrected is very vital. But it doesn't make you to lose the hope. If you have lost money, you can earn more. If you have lost your partner, maybe you will be able to attract him or her back, or we will get a better partner, or you will have a better life. Possibilities are there. If we have done a bad akusala karma, you do try to do good deeds as much as possible. So even that akusala is giving a bad result, the good kusalas would reduce, the good deeds would reduce its power, or maybe we'll be able to cover it to some extent. So that's the way, that mindset that we have to keep in mind. Keep it. So when we have that mindset, it's easy for us to forgive. And next thing is forgiving ourselves. Now this to get rid of the worry. Forgiving ourselves is, we have to always understand this is not unique to myself. There are many people who have done the same fault. We worry about certain things that we have done. Think about Hitler, who killed 30 million, who was responsible of 30 million deaths. Who was responsible of 30 million deaths in the Second World War. Now, such people have done immense, great crimes in the world, while we are worrying about some small thing that we have done. It's not to encourage faults. It's not to encourage wrongdoings, but we understand that I'm also a human being. And always think, that's why I said in the talk, if one of our friends comes and tells us about a fault he or she has done, think about the approach that we make. We will be very compassionate. We are not going to bring that same issue and hurt him or her. Right? We're not going to do that. Unless we have some quarrels or anger, it can happen time to time. But we're not going to hurt the person by showing the same fault. If we truly love, we don't do that. Maybe when we are having a bad mood, we may do that, but we truly regret and correct it ourselves. So we don't keep on punching the fault that person has. Why is that? We truly love him or her. So likewise, we have to think about ourselves as a third person. A good technique was given by one of leading persons who promulgate this self-compassion, is like, think about, keep yourself in a room alone by yourself. Keep yourself on a seat and arrange another two seats. So altogether there are 3 seats. Keep yourself in the center, and then go to one seat, so sit on another, and be the person who accuses, like, why you do this, you shouldn't have done this, and all these. Just keep on accusing yourself. Release all the anger that you have towards yourself. Then come and sit on this position and try to answer all the accusations that you have done sitting on that position. Now the person has accused You have done this, and this. You shouldn't have done that, and keep on accusing your own self. Then you sit on this actual position for yourself, the middle position, and say, you will be your answer. I did it because this, I had this type of thoughts, I was not very stable, I felt I had fear. Then you would give all the reasons to that person. Then act as the person who is very compassionate and go to the other seat and try to say, no, you haven't done anything, this is this, and try to be the compassionate mother to yourself. And try to answer that person. Come back to the middle seat and answer that person. Then you would say, oh yeah, I know you try to console me, but I do have these problems. I should not have acted in this way. I should have acted in such a different way. So what happens is, when you do this conversation with yourself, we act that the person who blames ourselves, who is within us, and who consoles ourselves, who is very lovable to us. And in the middle position, you get to understand, no, I have reasons to answer. If someone accuses me in this level, I have reasons to answer. Why did I act in such a way? Because I had some certain limitations. And if someone is trying to completely correct you, like to remove you from the fold and try to console you, and you would say, no, it's not that I should be fully forgiven. I had some responsibility. I should not have done this and that. So we are accepting the reality. So we are accepting that, yes, there was a mistake. I made a mistake. At the same time, I made the mistakes due to these reasons. I had these limitations. So when you have a better picture, automatically, believe it or not, you'll be able to forgive yourself. So it's a very nice technique introduced by Mrs. Net. Her surname was, I forgot the entire name. So you can read this in a book called Self-Compassion. You'll be able to see it in online. I'm not sure whether it's available online. It's a very nice book that she gives you lots of instructions on how to develop this self-compassion.
Thank you, Bhante, for answering all the questions. Now we shall invite Bhante again to conduct Anumodana.
Okay, so thank you for listening this Dhamma talk, and thank you for your questions. And I hope you got some insights about the topic that I was talking, self-compassion, and being compassionate to ourselves and to be better people, humans, and also to forgive ourselves about the mistakes that we have done and to move forward. So with this merit of discussing, sharing Dhamma, may all of us be able to progress well and to be more compassionate towards ourselves. And may this merit be shared with all the living beings, all the dead relatives of our lives, in this life or in the past lives. May all of them be happy and get rid of suffering and attain the Nibbana. May all the deities who rejoice on our merit be happier and attain Nibbana. And all the living beings, we can share this merit so they will be happier and attain Nibbana as soon as possible. And I wish you all the best in this journey of studying and practicing Buddhism, Buddha's teachings, and finally attain your spiritual goals in samsara and also attaining nirvana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Akasatta ca bhummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha sasanang. Akasatta ca bhummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha desanang. Akasatta ca bhummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha savake chiran rakkantu mamparang. Idamme punya kammang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Idamme punya kammang nibbanassa paccayo hotu. Mama punya bhagang sabba sattanang bhajemi te sabbe me samang punya bhagang labanto. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
On behalf of the monk and management of Magghavihari, we would like to thank Bhante for his time and sharing his Dharma knowledge with us. We would also like to express our gratitude to all our sponsors for their kind donations and all our audience for joining us tonight. Good night, everyone, and have a pleasant evening. Suki Hantu.